Imagine that you have detractors o mga nambubuli sa'yo. Sinisiraan ka sa social media at kung saan man. Gagamitin mo ba ang iyong mga maliliit na anak para kaipagtanggol? This is Arnel Mendoza of GCF Batangas. Tunghayan natin ang verse 2 na pinamagatan kong Unusual Ways for an Extraordinary God. Today, we look at how God manifests His glory in the most unusual way. Verse 2 in ESV reads, "Out of the mouth of babies and infants, you have established strength because of your foes, to still the enemy and the avenger." In the NLT version, the verse reads, "You have taught children and infants to tell of your strength, silencing your enemies and all who oppose you." In biblical commentaries, they pinpoint the age of these babies and infants to be around 2 years old, yung mga batang malapit nang maglaro sa mga streets. So, this is how I understand this verse in Tagalog. Mula sa mga bibig ng mga batang paslit manggagaling ang kalakasan para patahimikin ang kaaway. Kakaiba, di ba? So, if we say that God is extraordinary, then we can assume that He can do the most unusual things to exhibit His power and silence His enemies. The Bible is full of truths that underline this characteristic of God. 1 Corinthians 1:27 says, "But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God." Babies and infants are one of those considered weak in the world. They cannot even talk straight or hold a court-side argument, yet God chooses their mouths to silence His detractors. Matthew 15:18 says, "But what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart." Toddlers are considered to still have an undefiled heart. They think and respond with pure honesty, however we treat them. The psalmist was born way before Jesus' time, yet he wrote about how Jesus had high regard for children. Let us look at two New Testament stories. Una, minsan sa kanyang ministry ay nagdala ang mga tao sa kanya ng mga batang maliliit para kanyang i-bless at maipagdasal. Nang makita ng mga disipulo ang nangyayari, pinagbawalan nila ang mga taong gawin yon. Kaya lang sabi ni Jesus, "Let the little children come to me, and do not hinder them, for to such belongs the kingdom of heaven." Pangalawa, near the end of Jesus' ministry, He entered Jerusalem on a donkey and not on a chariot. His mission was to conquer sin. Here, it was the poor and the children who cheered Him on. In the simplicity of the children's hearts, they shouted, "Hosanna," expressing their adoration, praise, and joy, fit for a king. Yet, Jesus' enemies did not realize this. At the temple, Jesus drove away those who made it a marketplace. It was also there where the leaders questioned Him and tried to find a reason to trap Him, only to be humiliated by every answer Jesus gave. At the end of this story, the world executed Jesus. But God raised Him from the dead and exalted Him as the cosmic King, the true image of God. When God manifests His glory, it is not usually how we or the world would expect it. Definitely, He can use raw power if He wants to, being the omnipotent God that He is. Remember Paul asking God to remove the thorn in his flesh? God's answer was, "My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness." God, if He wills it, can use weakness, innocence, and simplicity as a means for His triumphs. Unusual ways for an extraordinary God. One writer expresses God's unusual ways beautifully, and may I encourage you to remember this. Number one, God invites His followers to share in His power and mission. No matter how weak or imperfect we are. 2. When God's people serve others from a place of humility and powerlessness, that's when God's kingdom and power are most on display. Join me again in tomorrow's Devo on video. God bless you all.